Hi, Jason Spengler, the SanteeSwapper, back with another unboxing. This collection I actually got in two different phases. One of those was the guy mailed me a box, and then ironically, the second phase, which is much smaller, I actually met him at the local Bojangles restaurant. It's kind of a funny story. We were trying to connect. He was in town in Charlotte. His daughter had moved here and been married, moved here. They had a baby. So, grandma and grandpa are going to come see the grandkid over the holidays. And so they were in the area. We kind of missed on the first attempt and then circled back yesterday to meet up. I drove to the warehouse to meet him because he was very curious to kind of see all the scouting memorabilia that I have here. And unfortunately, I left my keys for the warehouse, at least at home. I just had my car key with me. So we ended up meeting at Bojangles, had a nice conversation in the parking lot, and got the last bit of it. So this is a neat collection. This guy was involved in scouting in Nevada. That's where he did his scouting as a youth, and you'll see some Order the Arrow patches there. And then later, his career took him out to California. He was involved there. In fact, was a lodge advisor for an OA lodge out there. And then eventually, probably I think probably by the early 90s, was kind of out of the scouting game. He did attend the 1988 NOAC. So let me show you some of his stuff, maybe starting with his uniforms to kind of give you a little idea. And then I do have a box here that I'll open up. There's one patch on here. I'm not sure. Well, he was an Eagle Scout. And you can see he's got that early 1980s Eagle Scout patch. But there's another patch on one of these shirts that will tell kind of a cool story as well that he shared with me yesterday. And so if you can see this guy here, hold it up to the camera. So this is an event held in Sweden in 1979, the Dalajamb. And I have gotten these patches before from people. So if you don't know the story, in 1979, the World Scout Jamboree was scheduled to be held in Iran. And this little thing called the Iranian Islamic Revolution happened. And so the World Jamboree was canceled. And in sort of the scramble to decide what to do with all these scouts who had paid all this money and the plans and everything else, the kind of backup plan became for people to go to Sweden, which is I think either, I guess this was going to be their national jamboree. I have not researched that. I don't know exactly what the Dollar Jam is. But it turns out, I thought that when I saw this patch that he was an American scout who had that switcheroo and was going to go to Iran, but then had to divert to Sweden. But in fact, he was partially raised in Sweden and he was already in Sweden. And so he attended the Dalajamb, so sort of through the back door, maybe the front door, if you look at it that way. So again, just a couple of uniform pieces here that I can definitely try to get recycled. We don't obviously wear this olive green color anymore, but some people like to have what I call a throwback uniform, kind of a vintage uniform, and so that might work for them. And then the other thing he had with him in the car when I met him was this little packet. You've probably seen these before. These are given out at NOACs back in the day. This was kind of like where you had all your paperwork. And so he was not a lodge advisor at the 88 NOAC. He told me the story that I got invited by some friends to go. And so he just used this to stick some books in here. And so you see some merit badge pamphlets and a old scout handbook from back in the day. And then another one here. This is that one from the 70s, and again, this obviously very well used. So that's that. Of course, the patches and a lot of the sort of memorabilia stuff is here in this box. So this is what we can open up and kind of give you that whole unboxing. As I mentioned, he was involved in the Order of the Arrow over in um, Arizona. Is that right? No, I'm sorry, Nevada. And so there are some pretty cool Order of the Arrow flaps here. And he and I were talking about that. I grew up in the Order of the Arrow, was a lodge chief, and he was also highly involved as a youth. In fact, he told me that he was section secretary, which is the Order of the Arrow section would be like multiple lodges. And he told me, he said that people encouraged him to run for section chief. And he's like, oh, no, I don't want to be section chief. I'll just be secretary. And then he sort of later discovered in doing the work that it was a lot more work to be the section secretary than to be the section chief, who maybe had more of just, a gavel at meetings. It was kind of a little bit of a celebrity versus the person who actually had to put out the newsletter and all those kind of things like a secretary would. So just some things here. This looks like a little DSA thing, probably from that 1988 And then he also had some ceremonial books, again, Brotherhood Ceremony, Vigil Honor Ceremony. I've actually studied that late one night getting ready for a vigil ceremony. These are all kind of little pieces of history now. I think a lot of the ceremonies are being rewritten and kind of updated for the 21st century. These are some little trading cards they used to have, like this one here. These are all from the 88 NOAC. It has a picture of a person, and on the back you can write your name. And the idea is that you would kind of trade these around with other people and get a complete set. And then there's also this little thing here where you put it together. So it's cute. This is probably the paperwork that was kind of in that blue bag. This is the kind of stuff you'd have gotten at the 1988 NOAC, including, I've had this before. Here's your official Over the Era handbook, from the 88 NOAC, where they would do like a special printing. And so lots of, again, this guy, as I mentioned, was involved in the Order of the Arrow. So we have lots of OA handbooks here, and he was a lodge advisor a little bit later on. So lots of books there. This was a pretty heavy box that he mailed to me. Now, this I was intrigued by. Put this to the side here. So, you're going to have sashes since this guy was so involved. So here's his Brotherhood sash, and then here's an Ordeal sash. And these were obviously kind of the ones that were worn. But then he had these sashes, which are all in the original bags, which I actually think some people now might be interested in getting these because the modern Order of the Arrow sashes, they've gone with a manufacturer. I'm going to say China. I don't really know where they're made, but it's made with a type of material that people are not really excited about. It's not like a cotton feeling, heavy, thick cotton like we've had in the past. Some kind of synthetic material. Some people are sort of saying it's like a Timu sash, or Sheen or whatever, some Chinese place. But anywho, it does mean that there is kind of a little bit of a desire, maybe even a market for older sashes. And so these still being in the original bags. This one right here, this looks to be what some people call the scratch and sniff. There was a time period, maybe about 20 some odd years ago, where, going back to trying to save money, whoever the supplier was for National Supply decided to get these made, which is like this arrow is essentially a sticker that's stuck onto this. And these were not very popular and didn't last but for a couple of years. I think this one's embroidered, but that one I think was a peel and stick. And then this one I think is embroidered as well. And then here's a Vigil one that's embroidered. And again, this is kind of what I'm saying is if someone got their Vigil today, I've actually had this happen where a local person in Charlotte got their Vigil, got that new sash, and they were like, "Bleh," and they reached out to me and said, "You have a warehouse, don't you have a Vigil sash that I could come?" And so I actually traded with this person. I said, "Well, I don't have that brand new Timu sash in my collection. I'd like to get one." I said, "I'll trade you a nice cotton thick one for your Timu sash," and they were like happy to do it. So, but again, here's a OA sash that's the old cotton that's perfectly in the bag. So I think there's going to be someone who's going to want those, and you can definitely get those recycled. Then you got a couple of hats. These are always still popular, even though at the time people kind of dreaded the berets and maybe even these garrison caps. But I think there is kind of a little, I call it sort of a throwback thing where people like to wear the old hats. So this guy went all the way through, that period of time with those scout handbooks you saw. He would have had skill awards, and so that's how he would his rank advancement. And there's lots of little stuff in here, even Pinewood Derby and your Weeblows colors. He was kind of giving it, selling it to me to kind of get it recycled, and that's what a lot of people do. They kind of, it's the classic thing. I think maybe he had watched a couple of my videos. I said, he had drugged this box around or whatever box it was in before he mailed it from move to move. And, he's kind of at this point where he's like, what am I going to do with this stuff? So he reached out to a few friends and reached out to a few people, and we connected. And so I made him an offer and was able to buy it from him. So happy to do that. Happy to get these recycled back into scouting. He had some neckerchiefs, which I thought were pretty interesting, including this one, which I think is, this is the Dalajamb, Norway. That's at 1979. This is the neckerchief for this. I don't know that there's like sub-camp neckerchiefs and that kind of thing. I don't think they went that far down the rabbit hole. But this neckerchief is a little more scarce. I see a lot of the patches. I don't see as many of those neckerchiefs. And then let's see what this is. Again, just a little bag here. So this is a 71 World Jamboree. This was held in Japan, the Nippon Jamboree. And then here's a conclave patch or neckerchief from out west. These are pretty simple neckerchiefs that just have the patch sewn on it. And then here's that 88 NOAC that he attended at Colorado State. And then a troop neckerchief, Jamboree, Canada. Could have been something he got at in 79. Some Lone Scout neckerchiefs, which these are look like they've never, like they literally have the little Taiwanese sticker in them, so they've never been worn. I don't know if these were maybe something he got at I don't know, scout shop or something. Don't think he traded for them. Probably traded for this at that event as well. And then here's a 69. He probably would have traded for that. There's a lot of those floating around. My guess is, I don't think this has any word on it. My guess is this would have been, again, a foreign scouting neckerchief he would have traded for. I don't see any identifying factors there. And then this is the BSA contingent neckerchief that they made for that. You can see the eagle going on. This matches the patch that he had on his uniform. So that's pretty cool. Let me hold this up again so you can just get a good look at it. So I mentioned before that there's quite a lot of patches in this collection. And so there's a nice row here of Order of the Arrow patches. So a lot of them are going to be from Tanu Lodge. And whenever I always have to have a disclaimer whenever I, say the name of an Order of the Arrow Lodge, sometimes it's hard to tell. This is San Diego, Ashley Lodge. Then there's some camp patches in here and other event patches, then more conclaves as well. This is the old NLS patch from the 1980s, maybe into the 70s as well. I went to an NLS in the 90s, early 90s, and got patched just like that. I was on staff actually for that one when I was a lodge chief. So I know some of you want to see these flaps, so let me get these out and see if I can kind of present them to you. I have a feeling that he did, quite a bit of trading at the NOAC. He told me a funny story. We got to talking. He said that I'll tell you the story, but I don't mean to offend anyone. But he said instead of the 1988 NOAC, he said there were these guys, and he described them as beached whales who he said were just like laying on the grass. These beached whales were laying on the grass, and they just traded patches the whole conference. They didn't go to any classes. They didn't do anything. And I had just been to the National OA conference in last summer in 2024. Well, this summer. Well, it's 2025 now, but and I, not calling anyone a beach whale, but I saw these same people. Hell, I was one of these people who sat around and traded patches the whole conference. So I thought that was pretty funny that he remembers that from all those years ago. These patch traders who just sat there and that's all they did. So, but he had some cool patches. His lodge, you can tell this little antelope. That's the totem. He's got a little stack here, and then some more from this one. Oh, cool. He even wrote on the back. He's got some notes here where he traded um, these, and this one was worn, so he wrote some notes there. And then I mentioned earlier that he also was a lodge advisor. I'll show you that in just a second. He was not a lodge advisor of Tanu, but he was a lodge advisor of another one. So he had this flaps here and more Tanu flaps. And then here's the lodge, I think. Yeah, so this is the lodge that he was a lodge advisor of. So Lodge 395 in California. His travels take him to California. And unfortunately, he told me that when he got to this lodge, that it was really on hard times. He said that it was sort of scattered and there wasn't a lot of people. That it just wasn't really together. It was a kind of a rough go of it. And the lodge didn't merge while he was there, but then later the lodge merged. So that was kind of unfortunate. But again, a lot of cool patches from 395 that he acquired. I've actually, from a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, bought a nice collection from Lodge 395. And so I did get some older stuff. He did have one really old flap from there, but unfortunately, I mean, I'm sure he got this, from somebody who traded for it, but unfortunately, this one's been pretty stained up. There's even like a rip in it, so that's really just a bummer. I don't know if it'd be worth trying to get considering it has like literally a rip in it, if it'd be worth trying to resurrect that. But that's a pretty cool old flap. Then I can see he's got some other ones here from California as well. Like this is from LA, and this one Miwok is from another area. He had made some notes on these about where he traded for them. So Papago, Lodge 548, 342. Of course, you got to have a Malibu in there. So a lot of maybe once I'm thinking maybe he did some trading at conclaves because a lot of these are sort of California lodges. And so again, several from 395 where he was. So, and then there are a few other conclave patches from out west. So like this W3B, that area. And then he told me he had one of these 88s that had a pin on it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the participation pin. So you got that for, doing your stuff. So anyways, that is pretty much it. But this is definitely kind of a bread and butter collection for me, just a wide variety. I love being able to share the history and the story with you guys. And so this is kind of what I do. I have a warehouse here in Charlotte. Unfortunately, Thomas, I wasn't able to let you in, but he's going to come back in April. And I've invited him to come to the warehouse and kind of see some of the cool displays I have here. I said it's not quite a museum, but I can pull some stuff off the shelf and we can have some fun telling some stories. So if you have a collection like him that's sitting in a box that you've had for years and years and decades and maybe nobody in your family is interested in it, please reach out to me. My website is scoutpatchcollectors.com. I'd love to talk to you, hear your scouting story, and see if I can help you get this stuff put back into scouting. Thanks very much. Jason Spangler, the SanteeSwapper.